It's great to be here. I've said this to you. You're my second favorite church in the Bay Area. And so it is really great to be here. Before I get into today's message, I don't know, JP asked me to say a little something about this strange thing that you don't have your pastor for a while called sabbatical. And that's not easy, is it? You know, you don't have your shepherd, and you're used to him, feeding you God's word a certain way. And so you have to receive a different spiritual meal for some other guy from the other side of town. And so last year, I received a sabbatical too. And so in our church, I think they officially give me 3 months, and then I tacked on a month of vacation, so I got an extra month. Okay? But they don't know the difference. They're just like, he's just gone for 4 months. That's how it all feels to the church. And it's just to say a little something about this, because it's probably strange for your church. It's absolutely strange in like Asian American, East Asian American type churches too, like Korean American churches. Most Korean American churches are like, sabbatical, what is that? It's kind of more like that. And I found out, we tend to think, the white American Christians, they're really good at this stuff, right? And there is a pastor friend of mine, and he is doing some PhD work on church ministry, and he told me that the sabbatical that I was given, where the church plans that and gives it to the pastor so that he could rest, he says that's very rare, actually. So that was a little shocking to me. I found out, so the white American, Christians, they're no good at this either. And he says usually, and this is the serious point. Usually, when churches in America give a sabbatical to a pastor, it's an emergency crisis situation. That's often the way it is. And what he means by that is, that means your pastor is about to quit. Because I don't know if you guys aren't pastors, so you don't really know what this is like. You have jobs, and I'm sure your jobs can get hard, okay? But understand this, I can't go home and then just put my coding away. I don't go home and put the HR away. If you're today's Mother's Day, one of the things that I found out over the years is being a mother, there's a lot of pain in it. So just for example, I think about this all this week. What if a woman has a miscarriage? What if a woman has a miscarriage? And that could wreck the marriage. Did you know that? And she could go into a dark place of depression. And the husband, okay, let's just get real here. Most guys are clueless and quite insensitive and don't really know how to love their wife during that period. And I've watched that happen. So that's just one example relevant to today, Mother's Day, that as a pastor, you have to you're prepping messages, but you also want to love God's people, and you love them from your heart. So it's really hard to turn that off. And actually, my wife and I, we had a double date with JP and Jemima just on Friday night. And guess what? They are on sabbatical, but it's not off. You are on their heart. That means your joy is on their heart, and that is a reward, a great reward, much better than money. Okay? But your pains and your sins are also on their hearts. Okay? And so, over time, if you don't give a pastor a sabbatical, he will break down. And so that's what I found out from my pastor friend. And other older pastors that I respect, that's what they say. Because I'm a big fan of sabbaticals. You know why? Because if you don't give it to your pastor, they will take a sabbatical. And the way they do that is they quit. That's the way it works. Okay? So I just want to say thank you for doing that for your pastor. It isn't just a gift to your pastor, it's a gift to your whole church. It really is. And here's what happened for me. I left. I actually gave a big chunk of my sabbatical to my wife. And she wanted to go to Korea, and so we went for 3 months. That's probably not what I would want to do, but that's what we did. We went to Korea for 3 months, and what I did mostly was I turned it off. It took some time to, stop thinking about my church, stop being worried about my church. Just literally, okay, I know this doesn't sound very godly. I stopped praying for my church, okay? Because if I pray for my church, it's because I'm worried about my church. And so this was my time where the Lord gave me permission to say stop. Because a sabbatical word comes from the word Sabbath. And let me tell you what Sabbath means. It means stop. That's what the word means, stop. So mostly, I tried to just stop. Stop. I gave myself a permission from Jesus to stop. And to stop took weeks. And then to just eat good Korean food and watch Korean baseball and just be a child free before God. And when I came back in the fall, I was full again and able to love my people with a whole fresh, another chapter to give them God's word and leadership and, with the whole heart. So that's what you should pray for for JP and Jemima, that they will come back not burdened, and because over time we are not Jesus, okay? So if that's not, it's like, but sometimes your church wants your pastor to be, Jesus and the Holy Spirit. And so men break down, and sometimes their wives break down under that pressure. And so when they come back, they could be whole again. Would you pray that your pastor and his wife and their family can be whole in a new way, and it'll be great for your church, okay? So, all right, that's too much. You don't have a clock in this room. That's a bad idea. So I will be merciful to you. I'm going to start my clock, and let's get into it, okay? Mother's Day message, part 1. 2 pathways of dishonoring today. So let's get that. That's our slide. Let's go through the passage. I know this isn't, and let's go part 1. Part 1. There we go. 2 pathways of dishonoring today. Part 2. The great need for faithful, good mothers. Okay? And part 3. The motherly heart of God. You're reading that correctly. The motherly heart of God. And today's message, I will just say a little something. I don't think I've ever given a Mother's Day sermon. I hear you guys do it every year. Okay, so if this is a bad sermon, please just forgive me because I haven't done this before. But I want to give especially all the mothers in our church a gift in that part 3. Did you know that God has a motherly heart too? And I want to give that to you at the third part. So let's go to part 1. 2 pathways of dishonoring today. So let's get right into the passage. Ephesians 6, 1 through 3. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. In your cultures, most of you tend to come from somewhere from South Asia. That's probably something that everybody knows. In America, okay, I'm American. Okay, just a little something about me. This is a Korean face, okay? But if you open up the heart, you'll get 40% white American. I'm really like 40% white American, about 35% Korean, and 15% wannabe Mexican. Okay? And the rest of it is just confused. And all of that is strange because I'm from the Bay Area, and the Bay Area is weird. It's not really like anywhere else. Okay? And so all of that is confusing. It's a confusing version of white American, it's a confusing version of Korean, and a confusing version of wannabe Mexican. Okay? But if you've lived here for any period of time, you probably know this is true. In America, obey your parents. That doesn't happen. In America, rebellion is celebrated. Rebellion is celebrated. Because everybody is supposed to be their own master. So that's just a very weird passage to Americans. If you are from South Asia, you're like, okay, whatever. Okay, let's get on, because I already know that. Okay, because you probably learned that from your own culture, and that part is good. But here we go. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, not just in your culture. Let's just start there. Obey your parents in the Lord, not in your culture. For this is right. But now here is the meat of today's message. Honor your father and mother. Honor. And let me say a little comment about honor. Americans are horrible at honor. We are, I don't think the average American anymore knows what honor is, especially in this side of the country. If you go to other parts of the country, I think they still understand honor. So what do I mean by that? Honor has to do with treating other people and respecting them a certain way, and that you have the honor, that is your honor, and that you respect who you are as a man or a woman to act a certain way, which is honorable. And that is, it's practically gone in America. It wasn't gone when I was a kid, growing up in the Bay Area. So this is the so-called liberal, godless Bay Area. It was pretty. It felt actually kind of Christian when I was a kid, in the late 1970s and the early 1980s. And so when people talked about one nation under God, I don't know if you've heard this phrase. It's like not even celebrated in America anymore. One nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all. That's an American creed, okay? And let me tell you, in America, I don't know if Americans have any idea what that means anymore. Certainly not under God, and God, who is God. Liberty today means I get to do whatever I want. But that's not the right understanding of liberty. For justice, and today's talk of justice is often, I think, wicked and unjust, because it's not of the Bible. But honor, we don't know how to honor. And we certainly do not know how to honor our father and mother because we just rebel against them. But today I want to talk about honoring particularly mothers. Okay? Now let me just say a little of this. Verse 3. Verse 2. This is the first commandment with a promise that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. The you there is plural. Not just it goes well with you personally, but it goes with you, all of you. So a culture that honors their father and mother, and today's Mother's Day, do you have a Mother's Day where you're from? Do you have that? In Korea, I'm not sure if they have it. They have Parents' Day. And they have a Children's Day. Now, I told you I'm American, so I didn't know that. I had to ask my father. They have something called Children's Day in Korea, and my dad asked me, how come they don't have Children's Day in America? And I said, we have Christmas, Dad. And he said, yeah. He started laughing. He goes, yeah, that's all. It's great for the kids. And I said, well, isn't every day Children's Day in America? And he said, yeah, pretty much is. I haven't generally preached on Mother's Day because I think the majority of the congregation I serve, it's such a basic thing. Korean culture is a Confucianistic culture. And Confucianistic culture has this value called filial piety. And filial piety means honor your father and mother. Okay? And so, in Korea, if you do not honor your father and mother, you're basically like a dog. Okay? You are considered basically something like to kick around. If you're called a dog something in Korea, that's really, really bad. So it's super basic in Korean culture. So generally, I haven't emphasized this point, but I've been thinking a lot harder about this. We better celebrate Mother's Day in America, because my church is an American church, and it's really broken. Okay, so if we if we will honor our mothers, we're not talking about fathers. Of course we hate our fathers in America, okay? But just today we're talking mothers. If we will honor our mothers, it will go well with you, and you will live long in the land. And all of that is not happening in America, okay? Let's just go to the next I want to just give you a couple other places in the Bible you can see this. It comes out in numerous places, but let's just, for sake of time, Proverbs 23. So if you've ever read Proverbs, there's one verse, and you could do like a whole sermon series on that one verse, okay? And it's just like, boom, and then it'll do this, and then maybe 5 verses later, a similar verse will happen, and then 2 chapters later, a similar verse will happen. So you could pull out all these passages in Proverbs, and you could see that the Lord repeats multiple points. But here, they're just a couple verses apart. Verse 22, children, listen to your father who gave you life, and do not despise your mother when she is old. Do not despise. It's exactly the opposite of honor. Can you see it? Honor and despise. Now, most people are saying, I don't despise my mother. I don't despise my mother. And what we mean by that is the way you feel about your mother. The way you feel about your mother. But in the Bible, honor your father and mother, so let's get real here, is take care of your mother and father when they don't take care of you anymore. So in America, we have this thing called Social Security and Medicare. And the parents are supposed to make a lot of money, and then you have all this retirement income, but you probably come from a culture not unlike Korea, where, guess what? If your mom and dad didn't have that kind of money, who's supposed to take care of mother and father when they're old? You. And in cultures where they don't do that, you might have a good feeling towards your mother, but God would say, you despise your mother. You despise your mother. She sacrificed for you when you were a child. How come you will not sacrifice for her when now she is in need? That's what this passage is saying. That is what this passage is saying. Let's go to 25. Let your father and mother be glad. Let her who bore you rejoice. I think that's so interesting. Let her who bore you rejoice. So it's interesting. I always find that just a quick little teaching on how to read the Bible. Pay attention to those little things. Now, maybe because I'm a pastor, that's my job to pay attention to those things. But just to teach you how to read the Bible, it emphasized her. Let her rejoice. That's what we're talking about today. Okay? This part is about 2 ways that we dishonor. Let me say 2 ways that we despise mothers and motherhood here in America. And let me just make a commentary about one. So number 1, you probably haven't thought about this. I call it parenting legalism. With its guilt, yes, that's not a mistake. More than one kind of guilt and shame. Okay? So, in America, we have, this is what when I look around our culture and what it's like to be a mother today in America, you get legalism. In other words, you get a heavy standard. It's always do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. That's legalism. And if you don't, you're bad. And the women today who are mothers, they get it, especially if you're in a church like this, where it's kind of a bicultural, like you go, well, I'm not that bicultural. I'm from South India. That's my culture. But guess what? Your children are from America. And so you have to, you're dealing with both those cultures. And now you're living in America, whether you like it or not. And in America, this is what probably many of you are dealing with. First, you have your own culture's legalism. So I don't know, since I'm not Indian, I won't presume to speak of your cultures. I'll just say a little something about Korean American, Korean motherly legalism. Okay? If your child doesn't have a perfectly good meal, I never made lunch for myself. My mom always made it for me. And if I was hungry in the middle of the day, my mom thought she was a bad mom. And if that meant I didn't have like the strength and stamina to study really hard all day long, then mothers felt like if your child wasn't good at school, if your child did not get good grades, and you did not equip your child in every way to succeed in the world, and if your child behaved poorly at school, and to the neighbors, she was a bad mom. Well, that's tough. Because you have 3 kids, and what if one of them is just, an idiot? You have 2 great kids, and one of them is I just do whatever the heck I want. And mom is sitting there going, oh no. And she walks out feeling guilt and shame. Is it really her fault? But in the culture, I said, honor your mothers, but in the Lord, not according to the culture. In the culture, there's all these guilts on her. Oh, you're guilty for that. You're guilty, you're guilty, you're guilty. And she's shamed. So that's the Korean version. In America, now there's a whole other version now in America. And it's very secular. It's extremely secular. So our culture is secular, so they don't think they're religious, but they do have laws and legalism. So now it's things like this. Oh, your child should get like perfectly great organic food. Oh, you shopped at Lucky's or Safeway? How come you didn't go to Trader Joe's? Whole Foods. Didn't you go on YouTube and learn all those ways that your children are supposed to get, a great, perfect diet? But your child is kind of getting heavy now. It must be because you're a bad mom. Man, there's all these ways that our culture does that to mothers. And that is dishonor, I think. You shouldn't have a heavy, just crazy, back-breaking burden of laws. Remember, they come from the culture. But God doesn't do that for you. God's laws are actually, you could feel that they're heavy, but they're actually not as heavy as our culture's. It's strange. And they're actually the things that God does not burden you with. You have freedom and a chance to find out wisdom. So mother, that's the first thing I want to say. God gives you wisdom and grace, not heavy legalism, okay? And in your church, I hope that's the way it is, okay? So please, just a little note. When we come into church, let's not judge each other on parenting. So if you see a kid running around, kind of acting in a way that you think that's bad, please don't think, oh, probably she's a bad mom. Don't think that. Please don't think that. Please do not think that. You do not know what's going on. You do not know. Please don't do that. Instead, let's think about her according to grace. Because isn't that how Jesus sees you? Oh, you're bad. You're just bad. Therefore, I don't like you. But we sang it. You are acting bad, but Jesus gives you grace. Must be that way. A second way we dishonor moms. We despise mothering in favor of so we could worship career, status, money, and autonomy. So today, I don't know if you know this, mothers and fathers, your children are being utterly brainwashed. Brainwashed in our schools, in our universities, in our TV programs, in our movies, especially our young women, so that what makes her a good woman? If she rises to the top and runs the company, because now she can compete with the men. So I'm not sure if you know this. I grew up in this culture. There's what they called waves of feminism. So feminism is totally the secular religious ideology, the laws by which women are defined by being a good woman. So there was first version of, which was pretty reasonable. First wave and second wave was much more reasonable. A woman should get paid as much as a man if she does the same kind of job. Do you believe that's true? I hope you do. Because isn't that just a no-brainer? Duh. He does this job, she does this job. Shouldn't they at least get equal pay? Of course, right? But then you start getting to third wave and fourth wave, and it started to become anti-male, and I would say anti-female. So today's versions of feminism are all about woman power. Latest version, famous woman in our city, she wrote a book called Lean In. Lean In on woman power. She's at the top. She's really very powerful at Facebook. And it's all about woman power. And has nothing to do with being a mom. It's just completely missing. It's missing. Okay? So that's a way that mothers are dishonored. They're erased. Their values are erased in our culture. Because women are supposed to be powerful and make money and have status, just like the men. And if you are a superstar in your company, then you're a great woman. But if you're a mom at home taking care of your children, that's not valued in our culture. And that is terrible. Okay? Let's go to part 2. The great need for faithful, good mothers. And so I will take you to another place in the Bible, which I hope you know. This is Proverbs chapter 31. So for those of you who don't know, Proverbs is a book of wisdom. It's chock full of wisdom. Probably once every couple of years, you should read Proverbs. And you should pay attention to things that are repeated. But this is the way the book ends. The way the book ends is like this. Verse 10, an excellent wife who can find. She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. The book ends, it's really amazing. It's really hard to think about this. The way the book ends is what is an excellent wife. That's how the book ends. And it goes through all these attributes of an excellent wife. And I'll just tell you, this is, I don't know, it might be kind of offensive here in the Bay Area. The book of Proverbs is intending young men to grow up to become a godly man, and especially be a godly father. So this doesn't mean, of course, that, ladies, you shouldn't read the book of Proverbs. But there's all these parts in the book of Proverbs, which I never realized when I was a young man reading Proverbs. But then as I became a pastor and I'm a father and I'm trying to lead men, because that's a really bad problem today too, the men don't know how to be men today in our culture, is the book of Proverbs often has these pieces of wisdom so that we will have godly men who lead their wives and their children according to God's wisdom, then the whole society will flourish. So the book ends about how do you find an excellent wife? Interesting, huh? And there's all these attributes, and I can't go through them, but let me jump to let's go to the next slide. And this is verse 25. I don't know why the verse numbers aren't there. I think something about Apple must hate Microsoft, because when I did the transfer from Keynote to a PowerPoint, the numbers disappeared. Okay, so I think I'm kind of conspiracy. Apple hates Microsoft, okay? But I actually like it because you don't get distracted by the numbers. You can just pay attention to the words. So this is a description of an excellent wife. So if all the women are interested, and all you men should be interested, especially if you're single. Okay? So here's a few words. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. She can handle adversity. She can handle trial because she has strength and she's filled with dignity. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. Sisters, let me ask you to think about, do you have kindness on your tongue? If not, today is a chance you can get to repent a bit and seek wisdom according to the Lord. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Next slide. And here's the part that's relevant. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. And it's really interesting. You have all these parts of what the excellent wife is like. But you get to verse 28, and she is clearly a mother. Now, can you be an excellent wife without having children? I want to say a little something about this. I always think this is hard to preach about being a mother today, because if I say this is good, or just even becoming a mother is really, really good, it puts pain into certain women's hearts. Because what if they tried to have babies, and I've pastored women who've tried to have babies, and they couldn't. And the last thing I would like to do today is hurt them. Right? And I'm so glad that you heard today. Today is a beautiful day, but it can be a painful day. What if you lost your mom? So today is the day you mourn. Or, even more terrible, what if your mom was bad? What if your mom was abusive and she did not love you? Today is a painful day. But today, let's understand God has a way. And we live in such a broken and sinful world that if I say these words, please don't hear judgment. That's kind of how that's the evil Bay Area. Oh, the pastor, he must hate me because I don't have kids. We try to have kids, I'm ashamed now because the pastor is celebrating women having, we couldn't have kids. Please don't hear it that way. Please, I beg you. Please do not hear the spirit of my heart, which is the spirit, I'm trying to lean into the spirit of the Bible, right? And so we celebrate mothers. It's hard. It's a hard burden. But if that wasn't for you that you weren't able to get that blessing, please don't hear pain today. Right? Let's celebrate those who have made the sacrifice. But here we go. Her children rise up and call her blessed. And one of the things I just want to say, as I say a little bit more about this, is that we need a lot more of that in our society. A lot more of that. And I'm not sure if you think about this. I don't know how you spend your days. I regularly find articles when these things come up about what does it mean to be a good father or a good mother or good marriages, or a podcast episode about these kinds of issues arise. I listen to that. Why? Because I consider it's so broken in our society. It's utterly broken. So I'll just say a little something about this great need of more women like this. I told you last summer, I spent 3 months in Korea. So I read a little bit about Korean culture today. Because, I'm American. I found out something pretty shocking. Do you know the number that it takes for a society to keep the same population, not to shrink? How many children there needs to be per woman in the societies for the society not to shrink and literally die out? You know what that number is? It's been studied. That number is 2.1 children per woman across the society. That will just keep you, just think about it. That's replacement level. 2.1. Doesn't that make sense? Right? You have a mom and a dad, 2.1 kids. That replaces, and then we don't grow, but we do not die out. If you're below that number, your society is slowly dying out. Your nation is dying. You realize that? We're usually so selfish and only thinking about me, we don't think about our society. We do not love our neighbors in this way. But just having children and being good mothers and fathers, of course, that is the way we love our neighbors. And certainly it's a good way of loving our children. America, we're under 2.1. It's like 1.8 or something like that. That's not a good number. But it's not disaster yet. Because then you go to France, it's low. It's way lower. You go to like England, it's lower than that. Basically, all across Europe, it's lower than in America. So we're like, hey, we're better than you guys. But in America, there's two types of people having the kids. One are people who practice their faith. Generally in America, we're talking about Christians. There's a second group of people that have the kids. You know who they are? Immigrants. In one or two generations, your children may not want to have children. And then America's dying. So, you know what the number is in Japan? Something like 1.1. It's a disaster. Japan is literally dying out. So I thought they were at the bottom of the world. If you have a rank of that number, okay, in the world, you don't want to be at the bottom of that number on that list. I thought Japan was at the bottom of the list. I found that Korea is at the bottom of the list last summer. You know what the number is in Korea right now? 0.79. They don't even average one child per woman in America. And the reason is men and women right now hate each other. And I told you about the legalisms that women don't want to become mothers because they feel this crazy pressure and judgment. And it's both. The men are bad and the women are bad. And they have different idolatries and problems in their culture, but they too worship money and education. And so they're like, we can't pay everything for our child to go all the way and have success in our society, so we're just going to have one. Or, maybe even better, none. That's how it is in Korea. So, as a Korean and an American, I can feel this problem from both sides. And if it's not quite like that yet in India, it's getting there. It's getting there. Okay? I want to say something to the women right now who are sitting here. In America, you are prized for how you look. Is it like that in India? How you are shaped? How great is your hair? Because in America, sex is worshipped, and women are sexual objects. You're not a person who's valued for your love and for how you are made beautiful by God. The beauty standard is from the world. And if you don't meet that standard, you are hated. And women today, they do crazy things. They do crazy things about that. But one of the things I just want to say to you is, that is not how God values you. And one of the great ways that God values you is He put something in here which no man has, which is you are the giver of life. No man will ever have that. I had a roommate in college, and he said this. He said, because men cannot have babies, we build stuff. So just think about that. Okay, we can't have babies, one of the most glorious things in the world, human beings, so we have to build iPhones. Or we build like football teams or basketball teams. Oh, we have to come up with our own glories. The Warriors. And then we will have to create this trophy. And the women don't invent those things. The men do, because God gave you a greater glory. And you get this title, which is of that glory, and that title is Mom. Okay? Can you please hear that? You are honored by the Lord. You are honored by the Lord. It is infinitely higher than whatever the world says. So, a couple more pieces of advice to moms. In our culture, we worship sex and work. And the work, of course, is money. Of course. So, you are all a product of your looks, your job title, and the money. That's everything in the Bay Area. And so, when you meet a person, you ask this question, what do you do? It's a question about who are you? So do you realize who are you and what do you do are the same question in the Bay Area. So I've met many, many women like this. So what do you do? Well, I'm an engineer at Microsoft. And they go, well, I'm at Apple, so right? You know? So that's kind of like the hierarchy of glory in the Bay Area, something like that, right? And then what do you ask a woman? Well, she's like, well, I do this. That's usually the answer. And occasionally, some women say, well, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I want to say this to you. Don't give that answer. First of all, don't ever say just a stay-at-home mom. You're saying, I have a great job. It's given to me by God. It's called being a mom. Please never think that you are less if you are a stay-at-home mom. Now, some of you, if you're a stay-at-home mom, I think you're utterly blessed. It's very hard to be a full-time stay-at-home mom and afford to live in the Bay Area. That doesn't mean that we are a good culture. That means we are a terrible culture. It's actually quite oppressive. So a lot of the women, some of you want to stay at home, some of you want to work. By the way, if you want to work, I'm not judging you, so don't hear that. Don't hear that. If you read the Proverbs 31, the excellent wife, she's a working mom. She makes money. It's like she handles the money. It's wild. Okay? So please don't think that either. And so, one more thing I want to say is, whatever your husband does at work to make money, I bet you, in the vast majority of cases, if you are staying at home taking care of your children, let me let you in on a little secret. Your work is more important. Okay? Your work is more important. It's a secret. But it shouldn't be a secret. In the Bible, they build the temple. Okay, that's like, the engineer back then. That guy's like, he gets like mentioned in the Bible like one time. Mothers are celebrated. Fathers, mother and father. Honor is in the Ten Commandments and has a special promise. Good engineer, there's no promise about that. There's no special promise there. So all you men out there, if I'm assuming that a lot of you are brilliant engineers because that's how we get apparently there's not enough good engineers in America, so we got to import them from India. Okay? That's why you're living here. But, ladies, what you do for work, supremely important. Let's go to part 3. The motherly heart of God. So let me make a little comment here before I give you some passages to close out our message. We call God Father. Why? Because God says, call me Father. And isn't that great that we don't just call him God? He's like, yeah, call me by my job title, God. It's fine to call him God because that's who he is. That is his being. It's like, oh, Almighty Creator. Do you go home and say, Creator God, Creator God? No, it's great we call him Father. But there's a weakness there. And it's a weakness that God chose, which is we tend to think God is masculine. Because we look at our Father, and our Father is a man, not a woman, and then we project the Father onto God, and then we think God, therefore, is masculine. That's not right. Genesis chapter 1. Male and female, he created them in the image of God. Male and female are in the image of God. Do you realize that human beings, the men cannot image God by themselves, and the women cannot image God by themselves? Together, male and female, the full glory of God is imaged in the world. So there's something special about the way women are in the likeness of God that men don't have. Okay? That's in the first chapter of the Bible. So the Bible teaches an absolute equality that can't get deeper than that. You just cannot get deeper than that. It is in God. Okay, so that's the first thing I want to say. But it's interesting, there's not lots of places in the Bible, but there are some where God calls himself motherly. And I don't know, about maybe 15 years ago, I just couldn't even give this sermon because I don't know those passages well enough. But the Lord has made me think about those passages over the years as I've pastored women and their pains of mothering and their sacrifice of mothering. So let's look at some of those passages. Okay, Isaiah 66. Rejoice with Jerusalem and be glad for her, all you who love her. Rejoice with her in joy, all you who mourn over her. That you may nurse and be satisfied from her consoling breast. That you may drink deeply with delight from her glorious abundance. So this is Isaiah. Isaiah is a prophet that is saying that Jerusalem, the capital city of Israel, is doomed because the city, which represents all the people of God, is wicked and idolatrous. And how is Jerusalem depicted? As a mother. All of the children of God, they nurse from Jerusalem. That you may nurse and be satisfied from her consoling breast. Verse 12. For thus says the Lord, behold, I will extend peace to her like a river, and the glory of the nations like an overflowing stream, and you shall nurse. You shall be carried upon her hip and bounced upon her knees. So, I want you to think a little bit about this. What is happening here is Jerusalem is going to be overrun by an oppressive nation. And she will become a nightmare. And the children of Jerusalem will not have a mother that strengthens her through her nursing. Instead, they will be enslaved and oppressed and murdered. That's what's going to happen. So God gives this promise, but in the future, there will be a peace to her like a river, and the glory of the nations like an overstream, and you will nurse from her. So it says. You will nurse, you'll be carried on her hip, and bounced upon her knees, like a beautifully beloved child. So let's go next slide. You'll be like this. That's my baby girl, Elizabeth. And she was born 8 weeks premature. So it took a few weeks before her face got fat like this. And that's my wife. Some of you know her. And I thought of this picture as I read that passage. So I wanted to show this to you. She's getting bounced on her knees. Do you know that that's God's desire for you? Now you're saying, wait a second, Pastor. The pastor says that Jerusalem is the mother. Let's go to the next slide. Verse 13. As one whom his mother comforts, so I will comfort you. I will comfort you. You shall be comforted in Jerusalem. The passage though says Jerusalem is going to be the mother. But actually, then you get to this incredible verse. God says, I will be like your mother. Do you hear that? Let's go back to the previous picture. You see that? You see that before God, you are bounced on his knee. You see what God is saying today? I'll be like your mother. And he honors all the mothers. Let's go next passage. Isaiah 49. But Zion said, the Lord has forsaken me. Zion is the name of the city of God, Jerusalem, which Jerusalem is in in her total fullness. So sometimes the Bible says Jerusalem, sometimes it says Zion. Zion is the city of God. But Zion said, the Lord has forsaken me. My Lord has forgotten me. I told you this. Jerusalem is going to be destroyed. Verse 15. But can a woman forget her nursing child, that she should have no compassion on the son of her womb? Even these may forget, yet I will not forget you. God says, moms, she can't forget her child. But God says, I'm like that. Even if a mother forgets her child, I'm like a mother, like a perfect mother. I'll never forget you. And this, I want you to pay attention to this next verse, 16. Behold, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands. I have engraved you on the palms of my hands. That's interesting. Does that make you start to think about somebody? What is engraving? Engraving is there's something hard there. And a person with skill usually takes something sharp and goes boom, 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 and pounds and etches in. Usually it's something like a nail. And it's pounded in, and then you get engraving. So this is hundreds of years before Jesus, at a time when Jerusalem is being destroyed because she has been evil. And God says, I am like a mother, and I have engraved your name on my hand. And let me close with this verse. Matthew chapter 23, verse 37. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, O Zion, Zion, O people of God, my city, though you are wicked. You know who's saying these words? This is Jesus. This is Jesus. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. Here is Jesus. He describes himself as like a mother chicken. As a mother, a very lowly mother, gathering her chicks like a hen. Here I am, like a mother, to you, O people of God. And you murder the prophets, and you stone those who are sent to it. But I've come for you. This is what he says. And the God who is motherly, this Jesus, he came. He came to do a piece of motherly love. Let me close this way. I just gave you passages where God says, I will be like a mother and nurse you. You know, if a baby doesn't get nursed by her mother, so we live in the modern day age today. You can go to the store and you can buy this formula. And it's decently good. They've studied this, of course. You know, all our scientists have studied this and said, not as good as mom's milk. They've actually studied it. But prior to this technology, a formula being built, you know, if the babies did not get nursed, the babies would die. So literally, if moms did not love their children by nursing, they would not make it. I want you to hear the passage in that light. And God is saying, I will nurse you. So, I'm a young man, I get married. We didn't have children right away, and I thought, it was like, well, we might need to get checked. Then I got really sick, so it was all God's timing. And then I got better, and then bang, we got children. So if you haven't had a child and you're trying, there may not be any explanation except it's just not God's timing. Okay? That's what it was like for us. So then we had our first child. His name was Hudson. And here's something I did not know. My wife nursed him. And this was what it was like. She'd wake up at 2 in the morning, then she'd wake up at 4:30 in the morning. She did this for months. After she did this at the beginning, I said, okay, babe, I'll do the 2:30 so you can just sleep. So she got this pump. We put the milk, and we froze the milk. I mean, of course, you couldn't do any of this stuff back then. Froze the milk. I get the milk, and then I put it in the little hot, the warm water, and then I gave Hudson the milk at 2:30 in the morning. And then I sang a little song to him, and then put him to sleep. And then I said, please, when is this going to end, Jesus? Please let this end because I'm exhausted. After doing that for a week, I was going, oh, please. And my wife, and not just my wife, we have these pieces of technology, and it's a blessing. But just think, from all this time, mothers have done this. They're exhausted to do this. And my wife said, hey, I have to do the 4:30 because my breasts are full, and I have to pump, or I might as well just nurse him. So don't worry about 4:30, I'll just do it. So that means even if I gave her a break so she can get about 4 hours of sleep, she's still exhausted. She did that for months. And I would go into the bathroom to take a shower, and you know what I found? All my wife's hair was all over the floor. Is it like that in your house? I heard that women just lose their hair when they're nursing. Literally, the child is sucking the life out of you. I was like, I'm not kidding. I would have to scoop it up with my hand. And my wife is too exhausted to even see the hair on the floor in the bathroom. And I said, this is mothering. So let me close the message now. Jesus came and he gave life. And he died so that when his life was given out, you would be nursed by the motherly heart of God. And you would live. He mothered us on the cross. And on that cross, he engraved your name on his hand. When it was written in Isaiah, engrave your name on his hand, that was just a metaphor. On the cross, there's not a metaphor. There is literally a nail going into his hand so that his motherly love could give you life and you would live. All of you ladies who are mothers, you are like Jesus. If you are exhausted, if you are ashamed, if you are filled with guilt, or if you're tired, go drink from the nursing hand of Jesus today and be honored and loved.